playing anything.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with the audio. You guys
get
can
no
hear me.
audio.
You can hear me fine?
Nothing.
We
Can't
can't
hear.
hear you. I heard you
Nothing?
say, no, nothing. I can see your lips, but no.
How about now?
Nope.
Interesting. How about now? Anything? No.
Nope.
Weird.
I can hear everybody else, just not Steve.
Log out and log back in.
How about now? Now? No? Nothing? Really?
Nothing.
Nothing here.
How about now?
We got nada.
I can hear everybody else, but Steve.
Yeah. Nothing here? Still no?
All right, well, I don't have much time, so I'm just going to throw in here about the FHA. It is correct. It is a minimum of 3 gallons per minute over a 4-hour period. And Dave Sherwood, my boss, is aggressively lobbying against that 4 hours because it's arbitrary. So, it's not something that we're putting in place. It's just, it is what it is. And now we have to deal with it. We did have a client that did not follow the procedure and said, I just want the 1 hour. And he got to closing and he said, you got to do the 4 hours. So don't get caught off guard there. Steve does have the documents from Dave that he can share with you if you need it, but it is a requirement. Any questions on that?
Did we clarify this is for, I think there was a small understanding that was maybe just for new construction or.
No.
So it's every home. If I'm a FHA buyer out looking today.
Yes.
Okay.
New builds are 5 gallons per minute.
Test.
Yeah, it just seems
For 4
odd that
hours.
we haven't run into it with our lenders because there's a lot of FHA buyers and a lot of sellers that are probably accepting FHA buyers. But yeah, I guess I don't know.
We're just doing what we're told to do for FHA loans. They
Anything
don't have
now?
to do it. Okay. But if they do get into, the end of the deal, they might be required to do that 4-hour test. And one out of 3 jobs that we've done was a client again that did not follow the 4-hour procedure. So,
Yeah, from a lending perspective, it should be a
Testing.
simple condition
Testing.
that pops up immediately when you're doing an
Testing.
FHA loan. They get a
Testing.
checklist
Correct.
of things, and so.
hey, this just started on like March 1st. So
Testing.
they threw it out there with no real, forethought.
Yeah.
And now they're having all of these ramifications come up, and it's ridiculous. And we have to staff an additional person just to deal with the 4-hour windows.
Right.
So it's a huge burden on us structurally.
What is this, Adam? What are we talking about?
It's a what he's saying is for any government-backed loans, there's a 4-hour well test that's required regardless of whether it's new construction or not. And that's a huge, huge deal. So it's expensive because he's got to have a guy on the job for 4 hours. And if I remember the conversation from a couple of weeks ago, a well is typically not just a pump. There's a water issue. So we had asked the lender and he said, no, that's only new construction. And if it's been vacant for 6 months or 12 months or some kind of documented time period.
Right.
But what they're saying is that's not the case. So
Well,
Did you
Steph
have-
has the documents and we, you know,
Yeah,
we're
well, we'll take a look.
presenting all over our customer base that this
Yeah.
is the new requirement. So just don't get caught off guard. Again, if
Yeah.
your client says, I only want to do the 1 hour, we're good. It might
Right.
bite them at the close.
So I closed 2 FHA just last month that both had wells and I didn't even need a water test. Only my
Well,
VA has
that
Say
needed
March,
one.
though.
That was in February and it started in March. I
Yeah,
believe it started March 1st.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, get them in under the wire, I guess, but you know, they are starting to look at it from our vantage point.
So are you saying you have to run water for 4 hours?
Yes.
Yep,
Because we don't even run it for an hour now.
I know.
Well,
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now?
Hey, you're preaching
Yeah,
to
we
the
can.
choir. I don't want to do it. You know,
Well,
we
Chris,
don't
it's-
wanna
it's
do it,
even-
You don't want to do it.
It's even worse than you're thinking. It's not like run the water for 4 hours and then grab your sample. It needs to be what's the word? A supervised for 4 hours. So they have to have somebody
Every
there
15
watching the water for 4 hours to
Every
make sure that the
15
pressure does not drop below 3 gallons per minute.
We have to check it every 15 minutes under this scenario, just to make sure we don't ruin the system. So if it's not done right, you know, we could burn the system.
Okay, well, I just had one yesterday that has a well and we didn't check the water
Yeah.
either and it's FHA.
Hey,
So
you
I'll
know,
keep you posted.
Do it at your peril. I'm not making the news. I'm just reporting it.
I'm gonna, and I've sent the guidelines that Dave from Sherwood sent to me over to Semper, the new ones that he sent me. I can send it to you, Chris. You can send it to your lender, and you know, obviously, we're just trying to make sure this doesn't bite somebody at closing, you know, or 30 days into the deal. So,
Right.
Is this
Hey.
requirement just the government? Who checks this ultimately? Like when it comes into closing, who is responsible for checking that box off that it's been completed? Is it a lender? Is it a
yeah, it's gonna be the
appraisal
lender to.
situation?
It's
The
going to be the
lender
lender to meet the guidelines for the FHA loan, right? Because FHA is putting this into play, so it's a guideline, just like you know any other guideline that they have. And so now the lender's going to have to supply the document. So that's why these
All right,
lenders,
thank
you would think, would know about it, but
Yeah.
Lauren.
I don't get it. So,
Yeah, my
Um,
thought is a lot of the times when you have a well, you're dealing with a septic. So running 4 hours straight water into a septic system, like that blows my mind.
yep.
Wouldn't that overwhelm your system?
It very well could. That's why it has to be monitored every 15 minutes.
Hey,
So, you know, and this is the last thing we want to have to deal with as an organization. So, you know, the questions, you know, I can tell you from a inspection standpoint, but from a lender standpoint and what they're looking at and what their requirements are, that's on you to sort through that.
any other questions on the well stuff? Yeah, Meg, just ping me and I can share it with you, whatever they shared with me. No, this is FHA only. The question was, does this
Yes.
apply to USDA and VA? This is FHA only guideline.
And some people might want to change their loan and get out of an FHA based on some of these requirements.
Well, John, was there some other requirement besides the well flow that's new for
We
FHA?
hear they're gonna come out with some new roofing requirements. And maybe some additional water testing, but I don't even want to speculate.
Yep.
So, we'll get it when we get it, is how it comes out from FHA and whatnot.
Okay.
Hey, I gotta scoot off to a CE law class for 3 hours, which I'm really looking forward to. So, thanks for your time.
You bet.
Any final questions on that before I scoot? All right, thanks for
All
your
right.
time. Take care.
Thank you. The other big news, guys, if you didn't see, you should have all gotten an email from the National Association of Realtors. Let me just share the email up here on the screen so we can kind of talk about this one together, because this one is pretty important here, is that it's going to change our industry a little bit over the next 6 months. So NAR kind of took their final stance on clear cooperation. So if you haven't been following this topic, there are some of the larger companies are trying to lobby that the clear cooperation is not in the seller's best interest. A seller should not have to put their property in the MLS and market it to the public within any kind of a time frame that the seller should have the right to do whatever they want. And so the clear cooperation folks say, how can it possibly be in the seller's best interest to not get maximum exposure, right? You guys that are looking to remove this requirement are just trying to double dip on your listings, right? So kind of the famous brokerage right now in the news on this topic is Compass, trying to push their private network. So they are, hey, come work at Compass, and we have a private network of listings where you can put your listings in there, and only our agents will have access to these listings, and your buyers will have access to more properties, et cetera, is the argument, I guess. So NAR, Zillow, Realtor.com are all kind of on the other side, that, hey, that's not in a seller's best interest. The seller can have the right to choose, but we believe that a fair market is one in which everybody has access to the data. Obviously, if you're Zillow and all of a sudden you're not getting an IDX feed with everybody's listings, you got a problem. Right? You don't have a website anymore. You don't have a business anymore without everybody's listings. So basically what NAR came out and said is, hey, look, we are going to create a new category when you list that is going to be called a delayed marketing exempt listing. This means a seller can instruct their listing agent to delay the marketing of their listing by other agents outside the listing firm through IDX or syndication for a period of time. Right? So we can still put the property in the MLS. Other agents have access to that, but it will not go to third-party websites. So it won't go to Zillow, Realtor.com, et cetera. And then for a period of time, at some point you could say, okay, turn on the third-party marketing. My take is there are very few scenarios where this would be in the seller's best interest. A seller is going to want their property on Zillow, on Realtor.com, on Homes.com to get the exposure, to get the buyers, etc. So we'll leave it right there. Who has questions, comments? Did you read something different? Do you have a different thought on what I think? Lauren.
I read this whole email like 4 times because my brain wasn't computing why this makes any sense at all. Because it doesn't, right? Like, you would want, as a seller in most cases, I don't see how it would be a benefit to say only my agents at my brokerage will see it, and that's better for you. Like, that just doesn't make any sense in my brain.
Yeah. I mean, the thought is there are, people that need their privacy. So you've got this celebrity client, a high net worth individual that doesn't want people to know that their property is for sale, I guess. That's the only scenario that I could see where this could make some sense. Who else has some thoughts? Linda.
Yeah, it's just going to be a line on your listing contract where people have the option. You'll tell them this is your option, and we'll either check the box or not. And the majority of people will say, no, I don't want to do that. And, just like we have an option of, do you want your listing, on the internet? No, or yes, or do you want the property address on the internet? Well, who would say no to that? Like, how would anybody know where the property is? But it's something that has come up. It's a non-event. It's a non-issue. It's just going to be added somewhere on the listing agreement, and they get to say yes or no, and it'll be a non-event.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thought. you know, they're saying that each MLS platform will have their kind of do their due diligence and determine what they think for their marketplace will be the best amount of time that you can have this period. They want all the MLSs adjusted by September, I think it was September 30th. So effective date is now, and then it must be implemented by September 30th. So, and this doesn't, they made it very clear to put in here, this does not change the policies as far as submission deadlines or the clear cooperation policy. You still have to file within 1 business day when you have a listing with your MLS. Jeff.
Yeah, hi. Linda and I've had the, I guess, distinctive advantage. I'm seeing both markets that have an opportunity to do coming soon, or the private listing network where we used in Illinois. And then down here, you can't. And down here, by down here for anybody else, it's in Florida. Florida, you can't. It's go to market or don't. In that scenario, where we've found, I guess, some advantage to is the private listing network was, just as you said, it was available only to agents, so they could see what was in there. Now, having that agreement in place, at least in Illinois, allowed us to start marketing the property. So we could actively market any way we needed based on the parameters that were set in the listing agreement. So if we could put a yard sign in there, great. If we could put it on social media, great. We could do all that. Any of the normal stuff that we could do, that agreement allowed us to do it. And so for our conversation, at least in Illinois, depending on the market, was it gave us a running head start to the market. And the other benefit, depending on what the seller's mentality was, you might actually get a deal while you're in private, and kind of in Illinois, still pretty much a heavy seller's market. You would have the opportunity. Some people don't want to go through the circus of getting 10, 20 offers. Sounds kind of crazy, but some people don't. They just want to sell the place, move on, get a good dollar for it. Now, the other advantage too, for when we were in the private listing network up in Illinois, again, can't do it in Florida, but up there is, what would be the incentive for anybody to take less of a price while they're in private? Because they know in a seller's market, as soon as I hit the market, it's likely going to go up. So the advantage for them too is they're going to get, probably going to get the price that they're asking for, as long as it's in a realistic realm up there. So again, there are some things I think that could be advantageous to doing that. And again, it depends on what the marketing capabilities are down here. I read through that article too. I like the idea, but again, you have an option where the seller has the choices to be able to make. And as long as we're educating them and giving them all that information, I think I don't see it as a downside. We're not restricting it. We just have an opportunity to start marketing, and that ultimately could benefit them.
Yeah, I think that ultimately this just gives a little bit more choice to the seller for those sellers that want to take advantage of something like this. So I think it's a good move. I just don't know how much is really going to come into play. Chris.
A good move? Hell no. I am strong on the other side. I feel like this opens us up for agents to start playing God. And I feel like this is where they can start steering. So I feel like this is the kid taking the test, with the hand over, because they don't want anybody to see what they're doing. And I've been taught from the school from my broker that abundance, we share our knowledge, we share what we have with everyone. Like, I am a big fan of off market, as we all know, what was said before. Some people don't want 20 offers. Some people don't want a sign in their front yard. Not pocket listing, but just a straight real off market, like a real deal off market buyer seller. In this case, though, I just feel like that is opening us up for steering, because you're going to get an agent that isn't sharing necessarily. And again, this is because bad people exist. And they're not sharing with their client. And if their client can't see it, they're not going to know. That's just
I think it's a disadvantage. Yeah, definitely an advantage for the seller to have the option. I think you're correct. I think there are some agents out there that'll take advantage of this and won't fully explain to their seller what their options are, and they'll just not put it out there, I guess. So I think that's a valid concern. Margareta.
as much as I'm trying to wrap my head around this, I can also see advantages to this. I know it sounds scary because it's new and different, but I think it does allow the seller have some more control over how they're marketing their property. Having that kind of option maybe allows people to just be more local market, you know, like I don't want an investor from Boston looking at my property. I want to deal with somebody more, especially in the market that where we have more multi-offer situation. I think it might be different when that market shifts. I think also there might be some advantage to the idea that a person, a realtor, has more knowledge because of being part of such a network, or it just qualifies you on a different level from everybody else. So, you know, if you're just a person who just tries to get in and make a buck here as a new realtor, you know, versus somebody who's more seasoned and understands the caveat of the deal and the whole thing, you know where to go to get this information versus somebody who has no idea. So it just, and in terms of the seller or buyer information, I think there's, you know, this internet thing that we have, people will find out about it more than I think we think. And there will be maybe misinformation regarding this kind of situation, but people will know about it well enough to at least ask some questions. So it's a new thing. It's obviously scary, but I can almost like see how Linda was talking about the Chicago network. There might be some actual benefits to it. We just don't see it because it's new.
Yeah, I think the problem becomes when some properties are on the internet and some aren't. It's very difficult to argue that the seller that isn't, you know, is getting fair market value for their property, right? I think that becomes the concern. If I'm the seller and I know that the house down the street is on the internet and everybody knows that that one's for sale and not everybody knows that mine's for sale, I don't know. You know, and
That
Chris
almost
is,
becomes more exclusive, you know, sometimes, and that by itself might drive the price.
it might, you know, I think there's enough data out there though that shows that, you know, the larger the market, the bigger the buying pool, the more money that you're going to get for a property. You know, I mean, there is something to be said for, hey, this is off market, nobody knows about it, or at least not the general public, but we need a big number for us to not bring this to market, right? So you could use that strategy of, you know, you better bring us over our asking, right? I think that's kind of what Linda was saying, or Jeff was saying earlier, was they're not going to accept anything under while we're in this off market, right? We're either going to get our 400,000, let's say, or we're bringing this to the market. So you want to pay us 420 so that this doesn't come to market, then we'll do that. I guess my question would be, how do you know you didn't get 450 when you brought it to the market? So Jeff and Linda, I don't know if the hand is still lagging or.
Yeah,
you have
no,
more.
it's Linda. And to your, that is exactly how this scenario plays out. No realtor brings their buyer to one of these properties without prepping them and saying, the seller has zero incentive to sell this home for a minimum of this list price. So let's look at these comps, let's look at everything and decide. You might want to sweeten the pot by offering them more than this list price. If you love this home, give them a reason not to put it out on the open market. And that's so nobody goes to these properties with the thought that they're going to get it for less than list. Period. Right. So, and it's just sort of it's just amongst realtors understood. And that's the conversation that you're going to have with your buyer. And they're going to be a very, very serious buyer who really, really is looking in this particular area, you know, in this price point, and you're not wasting anybody's time. This is somebody, you know what I mean? And so we never, ever would take one of our clients to one of these places without prepping them and saying, this is the story story. And typically, who's going to be going to see those properties? People who've lost out on several offers that they've put in because there were multiple offers, and for whatever reason, theirs didn't go high enough or whatever. Those are the types of people who you're going to bring to these events. You're not going to bring the person who's going out and looking at a house for the very first time. Right? Because they're not in the mindset of, I'm going in, with full price or above full price on this very first house that I'm looking at. So that's understood. Now, is it possible that if the home went on the market, they could get even more than somebody who's willing to go 10 or 20 above list before to keep it off of market? Possibly, but then you also have to look at what are the implications with respect to appraisals and all of those types of things. And it's a very specific seller, who's going to say, hey, 10 or 20 above this list price, we're very, very comfortable with that. That's one of the reasons why we're going this route anyway, is not having the circus, and that's very acceptable to us. So it's a lot of good conversation, full disclosure to everybody, and with an understanding that whoever's coming in that house is going to be paying at least full price, period, end of conversation, pretty much.
Yeah, great points, and I love the fact that you've kind of been in that network and seen how it works. So I really appreciate your perspective, Margareta.
Well, I guess I'm thinking it's almost like in an airplane. This is the first class, but that also discriminates to some degree against any potential buyer who might not have enough that knowledge or connectivity with a professional that might be in that network. So, I do wonder how that would play on the fairness game. But then this is a world we live in. And I mean, I guess, Linda, did you see that there was some unfairness to the system? Because you experienced this.
We saw people use this strategy, whether they were selling a home that was, below 200,000 and, all the way up. And so I guess the only unfairness would be for those newer agents. To your point, Margareta, you raised a really, really valid point, who are not savvy enough because they haven't been in the game long enough to understand this tool. Right. So to that end, it is on their brokers to be educating their agents and explaining this stuff to them. If something like this is accepted by NAR, right, and it's agreed upon that this is a tool that is in the seller's best interest if they choose to use it, then your broker should be sitting down his or her people and explaining this to them. So will there be a disadvantage to those who get it and understand it? Yes, they will have an advantage, especially in markets that are super competitive with lower inventory, where you're scouring and looking for those properties because you've got a buyer and you know exactly what they want and you laser focus in on it. And the newer agent doesn't know how to do this and doesn't have those tools in their toolbox yet. They're the ones who are at the disadvantage. And so then consequently, their clients are as well.
Well, it sounds like this is something that's already in place in some states. We're just new to it. So there must be some learning curve already done with it. And it sounds probably it works somehow. We're just very new to this, obviously. So
it works. It's been an amazing tool. We've used it multiple times and gotten some of our buyers into beautiful homes. And after you've worked with a buyer for a little while and you really are totally attuned to the type of home they're looking at, the area, and then you go and you are hand looking for properties. Oh, this one would be perfect for so-and-so. And you call them and say, hey, this opportunity just popped up. Would you like to go see it? Yes, we would. It's been a fabulous tool for finding people homes that really, really are just perfect for them. So we have loved it. And it's also been a blessing on the sales side for the sellers who it's a very significantly specific niche, if you will, of who's going to use this tool, both on the sales side especially. But there's lots of benefits, and we like it.
Well, we are up and over the hour. I'm sure this isn't the end of the conversation here, but I think this was a good conversation to get us started on this topic, at least educate you guys a little bit on the pros and the cons so we can have an educated conversation with these sellers as we're bringing these houses to market. So hopefully you'll learn a little bit of something today. Let's take a look at what we have for training opportunities. Let's see here. Bunch of different opportunities today. We're going to start with the YouTube and new construction training. There is the long-term nurture playbook, short sales, share of sales, and REO listings, what you need to know, an attraction class, agent to investor mastermind, and then agent launchpad, which I believe is kind of like a new agent training. So there's some trainings for you guys. Have yourselves a kick-ass Wednesday. We will go back at it again tomorrow morning. Chris is just mentioning for Connecticut agents, we do have at those at Real, we do have a Connecticut broker meeting today, 10:30, I believe. All right, take care. We'll do it again tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.